Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Borum Forum. Tonight we talked about a bunch of different things. Ed Gillespie, we talked about the shooting, unfortunately. We had to talk about gun control in general. We talked about a bunch of different stuff, and I know I'm sprinting these words out at you. So I'll just let you listen to it. Here you go. All right, I think we're up. Patrick, thanks for coming and joining me, everybody. My brother Patrick is joining with me tonight, and I think he will probably for the rest of what we're doing, as he helps me with production and co-hosting. So, Patrick, welcome.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, so the first thing I just wanted to touch on, we're going to jump right in tonight with Ed Gillespie. So he ran, he had some momentum going into the election, but lost the gubernatorial race for Virginia. The momentum was a good sign for those that would have preferred VA return red, but losing means that the Democrats get a false sense of triumph against Trump. They tried to paint Ed Gillespie as a racist, a homophobe, and a Trumpist, while Ed himself was probably too liberal to win favor with Trump supporters. He also alienated his establishment base by trying to appear as if he was more Trump-like than he really is. This is a good thing overall for us. Ed Gillespie may not have done a fine job. He may have done a great job as the Virginia governor. We'll never know. But what's great is that Northam now has to prove himself through all the campaign promises that he was, issuing out. He was always anti-Trump. He's always just been a candidate running on an anti-Trump platform. So we're going to continue to see people trying to fight Trump. But I think it's going to be a lot easier for us to, I guess, keep Northam in check with Trump's policies than it would have been easy for Gillespie to join on to the Trump train. I don't think that he would have. So I think it's probably better that we have a weak adversary than a really weak ally. Um, I think that helps Trump. Now, going to President Trump, Pat, do you have any last final thoughts before we move on from Gillespie?
It's just not big news in my opinion. I mean, the same counties that went blue that went blue in 2016 went blue against Ed Gillespie. So
Right.
they should have lost, and he did.
So yeah, it's not a surprise to people. And I guess what's really astonishing is that people were expecting that Ed Gillespie might have a chance. There was some hope as the campaign went, because like I said, he went into the election with momentum.
Right.
But I think that was a false sense of hope given to people that would have voted for Trump. To excuse me, think that maybe they could vote for Ed Gillespie and not have Northam win.
Yeah, the thing is that the polls were saying the same types of things about Donald Trump in October of 2016 as they were about Ed Gillespie. So a lot of people had that underlying thought of, maybe the polls are wrong again. Of course they're wrong. We don't know if he's actually going to win or, how reliable these polls are.
Right. And I also think that maybe it's part to do with the mainstream media choosing to choose I guess I should say choosing to promote, show, cite different polls that are much more accurate so that people get a better sense for how they really ought to go and vote. Because if they, like they did in 16, if they just show you that Hillary's going to win by a landslide, then a lot of people probably won't go and vote for Hillary because they know it's a wasted time. Versus here, if they show you that Gillespie is really close, maybe that proves that people will come out for Northam more than they would have otherwise if they thought it was a landslide. I don't know. That's just my thought. But moving on, we talked about President Trump a little bit. He's making his trip right now. I'm calling it the Asian nation vacation that President Trump is on. And today and tomorrow, he visits China. I'm thinking we're probably going to be expecting some economic discussions, along with some North Korea warnings. I'm sure to follow. As the visit to South Korea went, I thought surprisingly well. We saw the video of his speech to the South Koreans, building them up, talking about their own nationalism, their own brand of economic nationalism, and how good it was for the South Koreans to consider the possibility of the future of reuniting with their cousins across the DMZ, reuniting with the North, and kind of squashing this really otherwise dark spot in the legacy of Korea in total, which is that for a long time now, half of their country has been run by an evil dictatorship. So South Koreans were outside to challenge Trump's visit when they showed up. Um, they were shown, I think there were probably 1,000 or so, but they were shown. CNN had a couple articles, others had articles outside Seoul carrying signs saying "No war, no Trump," other anti-Trump sentiment that you can find online. And while protesters rather were shown in the MSM as being representative of the South Korean people, There's a Redditor, goes by the name of Gooktown Napa, gave some context to this as a native South Korean. Um, and the image of the protesters skyrockets to the front page of Reddit. He comments, I think the top comment with gold, so people can go find this. It's very easy. Again, user Gooktown Napa or Napa, two P's, says, quote, just want to inform everyone that these protesters don't necessarily represent the perspective of the general population here. Yes, of course, we don't want war to ever break out again. No shit. End quote. Yes, Trump isn't very popular even here, nor is his antics, quoting here, so the grammar might be off, nor is his antics very effective at dealing with the complex situation we have here. But there's a gulf of difference between that and going out in the street to condemn the visit of the leader, however flawed, of our of our biggest and most important ally, while directing none of the blame to the actual aggressor to the north. If you can read Korean, just visit one of our largest news forums. Most people think these guys are a joke and are frustrated that they are making us all look bad in the international eyes. Okay, so here's a domestic South Korean who is saying all the people that are protesting Trump are doing it for the wrong reason. They're doing it because it's popular. Because hating on Donald Trump is a lot easier for people individually and in groups than it is to research what it is they're upset about. They just would rather listen to the news online at night versus thinking for themselves, looking for the research and looking for the articles themselves, determining whether or not they actually support Trump in trying to take down North Korea. And really, they're doing themselves a disservice because they could be rescuing, like I said, um, people that are essentially their own. You know, the United States was at one point split in two, and I like to think the good side of the United States stormed after the prodigal son side and brought it back home. That is the Union fighting the Confederacy and taking it back. I don't see South Korea urging themselves to do the same to the North. And I think they have a lot of people there that they would need to answer to that are in captivity, that are treated like animals under the North Korean regime. Um, Sorry, but I digress. Back to the quote. I'm so very annoyed that Western media, along with posts like this, again, this is the top front page Reddit post today on the 8th of November, 2017, showing protests in South Korea when Trump was visiting. He says, quote, photos like this seem to cherry pick the photos and use very inclusive language like South Koreans gathered to somehow illustrate that the whole nation has rallied to kick the United States to kick off the American GIs off the peninsula or some shit. It's just so clickbaity and misleading. This is a quote directly from a South Korean, by the way, having to do with Trump's South Korean visit. I don't need to read the rest of this, but it just says, clickbaity, misleading. People eat it up. Seeing how many comments on world news were like, if they don't like us, they should leave, and let North Korea attack them. This is baiting another war, in my opinion. Um, so not only is the media misrepresenting the South Korean protests, Patrick, but they're also not giving fair coverage to the welcome party in China. Did you see what looked like when Trump got off the plane in China?
They love him.
They love him.
Everyone loves. I mean, they were like bowing to this guy.
There's like balloons, flowers. It looked like he was there to tell them they all just won the lottery.
And I think it's because that Donald Trump just embodies the pure American dream badass.
Yeah, it's all China ever wanted.
I mean, that's what they love. That's the one part of their economy they're like, yeah, we want to do that.
The one thing I think that Chinese people really take pride in being in China, and this is probably going to sound super arrogant, but I don't really think it is. I think I could make a very academic argument for this. I think that the one of the best things that the Chinese people produce is something that says, "Made in America" on it. I think that's a funny thing when they try to forge a product, have it be a fake product that has been made in America, and they even stamp "Made in America" on it to try to sell it. I take that as a compliment, even if it's wrong. What do you think?
Well, I think that the Chinese as a people are just they value hard work and dedication, and they're very industrious people.
Yeah.
As a nation,
Well,
they're
and
industrious.
yeah, and historically they've been industrious.
The Chinese, I mean, going back thousands of years, they've always been, in their own kind of
Yeah, I don't
side
think
of the world, and
you don't have to make the case for it. Yeah, I mean, we all know.
they're crazy. They're great.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying crazy like crazy how great the Chinese are at industrializing an economy, moving people. But here's their problem: they don't have a middle class.
Well,
It's a production company without consumers.
I only meant, crazy in the sense that they have just such a unique culture from everywhere else in the world, especially with their art and their folklore. It's just very, very unique.
I forget who says it. I don't know if it's a comedian that I listen to or if it's a pundit or a commentary personality, but somebody said when you're looking at diversity and you're looking at the United States and you're wondering if the United States could be more diverse, if it's diverse enough, if it's less than it needs to be, look at the United States Olympic gymnastics team for the women and see how diverse it is versus the Chinese women's gymnastics team. Because the Chinese do not have diversity. They're all Chinese women. They will forever always be Chinese women. In America, there is no one American looking woman. That's kind of the nice thing about the country. And that's, I mean, what people have always talked about when they talk about the melting pot or the salad bowl, however they want to call it. Um, but I mean, that's really just I guess, a nuanced point as far as the diversity goes within the United States versus China.
Yeah, it's just really funny because you will then look at the 100-meter dash, and it is not diverse at all.
Well, that's racist.
Well, no, they're just very good. Um, but
Right. Well, that's the competitors versus representatives. Okay, so moving on. We're not just being mischaracterized in South Korean protests by the media. We're not just seeing mischaracterizations of Trump in China, where they're not really, I guess, not giving him any coverage, not paying any attention to the fact that he's loved. They're not even calling to question why the Chinese would be loving him, unless to kind of throw dust in the eyes and dirt in the face. But here's one that I want to get to: the koi pond scandal.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
right. The koi pond
yes,
scandal.
yes.
Okay, so
I was
here,
about to bring that up.
let me break this down.
Yes,
We see in the unedited video. Okay, we see Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, the man. Okay, I actually like Shinzo Abe a lot.
he's kind of sweet. He's nice.
I took two different classes on Japanese foreign policy and Japanese political history in my bachelor's degree, and I can tell you, I've studied what Shinzo Abe has done economically and I guess socio-politically versus what they've had former leaders do. He's doing much more what we would all ask for from America than any other leader in the past. But I digress. Here we go. Shinzo Abe takes what is left of the food in the box from his little, box feeder, right? Dumps all of it into the pond. Says it's clear, right? They're done doing the feeding of the fish for the photo op. They're done. They're now leaving that area. Shinzo Abe tosses his box upside down, shakes out the loose, like big puff of the fish flakes that he had, and then Trump does the same thing. Now, there's no reason that this would be important, except that CNN actually cropped the video moment, the video shot of that moment, so that you could only see Trump looking around, kind of dazed. And then as the video pans out, you see Trump dumping his fish food.
They're just trying to make him look stupid.
Right. It appears like he's being disrespectful and buffoonish. Now, I find it so stupid about all of this isn't because, I'm not making the argument that CNN's given up all credibility. Of course, they've already given up all credibility. Of course, we know this. CNN, hashtag fake news. But now they're not just caught tinting a picture on a camera to make Trump look even more orange, which they've also been caught doing. No, this time they're actively doctoring footage. They're taking photos, videos of the president, cutting the context out, literally cropping the context out of the video so that we can see the president out of context and mischaracterized. And then it zooms back. It zooms back so you can see Shinzo Abe and looking around kind of, and the way that they've done it is, I mean, artful.
Well,
it's
look,
artful,
look,
but it's wrong.
It's a meme. That's all this is. This is a meme that was made by the news, and I'm pretty sure. I think it's going to come out that this was actually like a GIF that somebody made immediately, and then the news picked it up and was like, "Let's run with it."
Well, the news is certain. Well, when we say the news, we mean like mainstream media, CNN, New York
I'm
Times,
saying
the like.
whoever showed that, I think it was
Right.
a CNN clip.
It was a CNN clip, but I guess the point was no other place had it. CNN had it that way. Others had the tail end of it where it was just Trump.
Then they made a meme, and they shouldn't have.
They made
because
they made
they're not in meme making business.
Well, they are. That's the problem. Memes
They
are
a
fake
meme.
news.
They are a meme.
It's always a mischaracterization.
Memes cannot birth other memes.
Shut up. Oh my God. But this is infuriating to me I mean, their goal at CNN is to make Trump look like a buffoon. I guess it's our job then to make sure that the truth gets out to as many people as possible, and that there's more to each news story than what CNN is giving you. Even with the video, even when they're giving you audio, CNN can still lie to you. We've just seen it today. We've seen them tint the videos of Trump to make him look more orange, and then when they cut to their people, they have to quick take the tint off. We've seen this happen.
It's not
We have it.
news.
It's not news.
It's not
Well,
news.
they're not news, but it's also not news
Yeah,
that
we
they're
just
fake
we
news.
have to look through the blinds, and we have to realize that what they're showing
Look
us
through the
is
blinds.
not even an issue. Like there are bigger and badder things and bigger and interesting stories out there in the world that they're not even talking about.
Yeah, and here's one. They are talking about it, though they're talking about it in the wrong way. I want to give you my points, and then I want you to jump in. Um, and feel free by listening. Give us your comments. Give us your suggestions. Feel free to DM at the Borum Forum on Twitter. You can also email theborumforum@gmail.com. Okay, the big issue I want to get into. Hang on a second. Oh, gotta keep hydrated. The biggest issue I want to get into for the week, because I want to keep it shorter tonight still, is the gun control debate. Okay, here it is. The gun control, it's a big issue. I'm sure that all your friends on Facebook are talking about it. While I believe, as I tweeted earlier today, that gun control has already been discussed, it was 1789. It didn't pass. Instead, James Madison wrote the Bill of Rights to include what he described as the most important right that we have as American citizens, and that's the Second Amendment. Everyone has a point to make on gun control, and it's always talked about after a shooting. How do we combat these demands for gun control, you might ask? How do you illustrate to your friends that they're misguided on guns? It's hard, but you could tell them a couple of these things, and these are some good and some bad arguments. I'm just pointing out a list of a few that we've all seen. The first one: guns don't kill people, people kill people, so don't blame the gun. That's one thing you could try. You could try the where does it end? You know, the logical fallacy of saying that it's a slippery slope. If you ban guns, what next? If you ban a specific type of gun, what next? If you're Bernie Sanders, you could say we could ban all the guns. All the guns will be banned. Mental illness is an argument. It's also a cop out, but that's what people will bring up as well. It's a good point. It's not the point, but it's a good point. Accessibility to guns, to criminals, doesn't change. With more laws for them to violate, the price does. And someone is going to kill multiple people in a frenzy. They're going to find a way to do it. That's an argument. You can use that one. You can use the argument of trucks or knives or banning cars, like they're doing in California, or at least proposing. How they're trying to ban cars in big cities in California, you could bring that up. There are a lot. Patrick, do you have any others to add from Facebook? Any quick cliche arguments against or for guns?
Cliche? I don't know. I
Okay.
mean, not off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, I feel like I've labeled a bunch, and they're all fine arguments. Some are better than others.
Well,
Some hold more weight than
there
others.
there is one, and it's the idea of you don't need an AR-15 to go hunting.
Right. Well, that's kind of my where does it end
Mhm.
argument of if you're gonna ban an AR-15 because you don't need it for hunting,
Well,
you don't need it for something. I've also heard this one this week. Someone said, I don't see people asking why they need it, what they're using it for. If people just asked that and then they had to stop and think about it, they probably just walk away and not buy the gun. You're out of your freaking mind. They know exactly what they want to use it for. When people go to buy a gun, they know exactly what they want it for. It's for home defense. It's for protection. It's for uh, um, target training.
it's for having a damn gun. It's
And
my
yeah,
right.
and
It's
the
my right.
right. Well, and the biggest one I was going to say was to exercise the right to own it. So, like, you might, if you live in New York as a kid, to not want to just go without having a driver's license, you might go through the hoops of actually getting your driver's license, even though the likelihood of you ever owning or driving a car if you live in Manhattan is low. Um, but I digress. There are a lot of different ways that we can have these conversations on Facebook, and you'll never win them. If you can, this is something that I heard a long time ago, and I'm not sure if I think it's true or not, but I think it's interesting. And that is, if you spend more than 5 minutes in a debate with somebody, you've both lost because neither of you will change your mind if it's been 5 minutes and you're still dug in. And I don't know if it's 5 minutes, if it's a half hour, whatever that time frame is for this conversation. But my thought is you'll probably never win it. You can make all the best points. You can call out all the hypocrisy, and you can point out all the ignorance to the actual issue till you're blue in the face. Nothing's going to change. Um, but what you need to do is point out the commonalities across all of the mass killings. because it's not just shootings that we're really talking about. If you can make it all about shootings, then of course you can say let's ban guns. But we're not talking about shootings. Shootings aren't the problem. It's people that are killing in general. You were going to say something?
Yeah, just this entire situation that happened in Texas this past Sunday is just such a clear cut example of why civilians need to have arms.
Well, we're going to get there, but I want to first talk about how you're going to tell your Facebook friends.
Oh, I don't need to tell my Facebook friends anything. They know.
Right, but
They'll figure it out for themselves. They're gonna realize it.
well, all you have to do is point out that there are commonalities among all the different attacks, whether it's by Antifa or jihadis. There are always at least there's always at least one thing that they have in common, because there's no one weapon that people use for mass murder. Despite what the leftist argument is that the AR-15 is the weapon of mass death and terror, it actually only takes up 1% of total shooting deaths. That's not even the total deaths in mass killings. That's just 1% of shooting deaths.
Mostly handguns.
Right, right. So the shooting deaths made up of like I think 96% handguns. But again, we were kind of off the. What we're talking about is the commonality of all these killings, whether it's shootings in the United States, trucks, knives, bombs, nails in Europe, around the globe. Okay, the commonality is political ideological radicalization, coupled with mental capacity and mental illness. Anyone who is an Islamic extremist who has a severe mental illness. I would put money on that. If you are an extremist, if you are an Islamic extremist, you have a severe mental illness and a capacity issue stemming probably from generations of inbreeding. Now, I'm not saying that to be demeaning or condescending, but statistics and numbers all show 70% of Pakistanis today are inbred. 67% of Saudis are inbred. If that gives any indication as to how likely it is that the extremists coming from those countries, the ISIS members, the terrorists in general, are incapable, are deranged, by all accounts, possibly retarded. That's what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with rage, irrational behavior, outbursts. Does that sound familiar?
They've had how many generations of inbreeding they've been trying to keep their bloodline pure? Because there's the big Shia and Sunni rivalry, so you can't mix the Sunni and Shiite blood.
Right.
So you have to marry within your own family, and it's very, very well regulated. They do this, and they know it.
And it's not just them, okay? Mental illness stems into everyone's lives. Like Devin Kelly, look at that dude, the Sutherland Springs shooter. Okay, he was thrown out of the armed forces after abusing his wife and infant child. We all heard about the baby's head that was cracked open by the guy. And because the Navy neglected to apply his record to the federal background record check system, whatever that is actually called, he's allowed to buy a gun federally. That led to this attack. The Texas state, as a reminder, I want to make this clear, the state of Texas, right on them, denied him when he applied for a gun because of that record, because it showed up at the state level. He's a known Antifa fan and member, and he's had a slew of problems attached to him. They can't get into his phones right now, so I'm not going to speculate as to who he associates with. But from his data and social media use, there are reports of Devin Kelly specifically reading about and discussing church shootings online 3 days prior to the attack. Now, the Las Vegas shooting investigation has not and will not be released. The FBI has not tied any motive or new information to the shooter or shooters.
Well, that's not quite true. No, they declared that the official motive of this guy was that he was in a domestic violence situation with his stepmother, and the stepmother was supposed to be at the church.
No. You've missed it. I said the Las Vegas shooting investigation has not and will not be opened. We've moved on from the church. I'm talking about.
Well, I was just saying right before you were talking about how he was deranged and this Antifa member. They haven't came in anything out with him being a part of Antifa.
That's all online. Whether or not CNN will report it.
No, it was.
We're talking about Devin Kelly in Sutherland Springs.
I know.
Texas.
Yeah, there was the photo of he put up. This is a bad bitch of his. He need to put up a picture of his AR-15. And if you saw U.S. Weekly, they put out a video of all of the different attachments that I had, and it did have quite a few attachments. Yeah.
Great. I mean, what does that have anything to do with anything?
Well, you were trying to attach him to Antifa, and he's not a part of Antifa at all.
He absolutely had.
He's not.
He had been on Antifa on Facebook. He had posted on their groups.
Where is that coming from?
This is coming from everything that I've seen today.
Any source.
I mean, I can pull up all the screenshots that have been posted on 4chan of people that found his
All
profiles.
right. I mean, that's the thing. I'm not,
Yeah,
I'm not,
you don't know.
I'm not going to place a whole lot of bets into 4chan rumors.
It's not rumors when you can see it on your screen. What isn't a rumor is when CNN says we're not sure what he's radically tied
I,
to.
I, I listened to Ben Shapiro's podcast and he hasn't lied to me yet. So
That's fine. He doesn't, I don't know that he knows this or not, but this guy was associated and was a fan of Antifa. He watched as the day of whatever it was that Antifa was planning, the day of fighting back or resistance, whatever they were going to call it, when they tried to start their civil war. He watched this come and go. It didn't happen, but he went and carried out an attack on a church.
it wasn't motivated of that. It was domestic violence. He was trying to go kill his stepmother, and his stepmother wasn't even there.
That's exactly what they are telling you because they don't want you to know that it was Antifa based or that it's Antifa associated because they don't want to have to fully admit in the public, which they've already
I
done
mean, there was a bunch
quietly,
of text
which they've already
messages.
done quietly from the FBI has released saying that Antifa is a domestic terror group. So even if this guy comes out not to be associated with Antifa at all, say that those reports that I'm reading are wrong. Say that what I've found today isn't true, that Devin Kelly is not part of Antifa and maybe was just a fan or not even a fan. If it was just domestic terror, just domestic violence, rather, it's still terrorism.
Oh yeah. I mean, well, it would be terrorism.
We also know that he
it would be
was not a
terrorism.
big fan of Trump.
It would be terrorism if it had a political motive. So in the case if it was an Antifa, he would be a terrorist, domestic terrorist. And yes, Antifa is you're right on that. Antifa is such a domestic terrorist
The
group.
FBI has already come out and reported that that's the case, as well as the BLM.
Well, okay. Look, the FBI has not called this guy part of BLM or Antifa. They said
fine. They don't have to.
Okay. In the case that his motive is purely domestic violence, it wouldn't be terrorist by definition. It wouldn't be a terrorist.
If it's just domestic violence and he goes in and does a mass shooting,
right,
then you have to ask what his motive is.
Well,
if the motive is to go and kill as many people as possible, which he obviously was doing, because when he walked into the church, Patrick, there are stories.
Terrorism is
hang on. Don't talk over me. Wait, stop. I'm making a point. When he walked into the church, he looked for crying babies, and he was shooting them first as he was walking around looking for people to kill. So you can't say that that's not terrorism, regardless of
you
what
don't know the definition of terrorism. Terrorism has to have mass violence for political aim. Then it's just a tragedy.
It's to instill fear.
That's not what terrorism is. Look up the definition of terrorism, dude.
I'm sure there are multiple definitions. And just because that you listen to Ben Shapiro all day does not mean that everything that Ben Shapiro says is gold.
No,
this is just I'm a big fan.
Look up the definition of terrorism right now.
Well, why don't you pull it up? I'll move on to Republican Representative Steve Scalise and his gang, the softball practice shooting. Another example where the shooter, politically motivated, where the shooter was from the left.
All right, right here.
Hang on. You wait. So the softball practice shooting also stems from political dissent and unrest. The guy was a Bernie supporter who was pissed about the election. He should have been pissed about the primaries, as we come to find out that the rumors were true on that one as well, that Hillary did steal that one, and went on to go and kill Republicans, or at least try to, for flying a red banner instead of a blue one. Specifically, he asked which party they were belonging to before he went to his trunk and armed himself. Okay, now you've gotten the definition of terrorism pulled up. Yeah. It says the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political aims. And I guess what I'm saying is, whether or not the FBI comes out and says it's terrorism, the fact that the guy was angry about the election, was adamant against Trump and anyone that was supportive of Trump, he could use the argument with his aunt or whomever, stepmom, to go after the people in the church. But the reality is, if she's not there, he doesn't carry out the attack unless he wants to be a terrorist. And that's what he did.
Well, the thing is if he, I'll give you that if he comes out and if it comes out that it is true that he is anti-fascist, if he's part of the Antifa, I'll give you that. But
there are pictures of him in all black, donning all their stuff, trying to look cool with a neckbeard.
All right. You know what? I'll be open-minded and take a look at those reports. And if they come out to be 100% true, then I'm good with it. But right now, from what I'm getting, it's just some comments on 4chan, which some of them are, me, 4chan, I have Kekistan. Some of that's, some of that type of stuff is true.
Right. And by the way, for everybody listening, I'm not saying that this is being reported, at least specifically to this guy, to Devin Kelly, like that he's absolutely an Antifa, and we know that. what I'm saying is that I've seen reporting information that would suggest he is a part of that, or at least is a fan, which is why I said he's a fan, if
Yeah.
not a member.
He's definitely the type.
And he's certainly the
He's the
type.
type. He's definitely the
I
type.
don't think we have. Yeah, I mean, when the memes come around of saying, the white kids that go and shoot up the school,
Yeah.
that is this guy.
Oh yeah.
And so, anyways, I guess the commonality between all these attacks, to get back to the final point, um, is the victims. The victims are the commonality. They're free. They're principled people. In each of these attacks, whether you look around the rest of the world at an Ariana Grande concert, if you look at people that are the victims of terrorist attacks or mass killings in general, because of their political, ideological, or economic beliefs in capitalism and free love and free speech, those are the people that are being targeted at movies, concerts, softball practice, even church. They're exercising their freedoms, living in a Western culture. These are things that fascism hates. These are things that radicals want to destroy. These are things that trigger the deranged and despicable killers. In other nations without guns, or in places where gun control is the most strict, you will see people being killed in mass by terrorists. They may use trucks, blades, explosives, etc., but they still kill indiscriminately nonetheless. They don't have to use a gun. Just because guns are illegal or banned or highly restricted in other countries does not mean that they're not using trucks, knives, machetes, bombs with nails in them, etc. The issue in America is guns because they use them here. They're available. But you go anywhere else and you're going to see the same or worse violence. Controlling the weapon isn't the answer because anything can be turned into a weapon. Controlling who can legally enter your country, that's a policy that you can control. Policing public spaces for specific suspicious activity is the way to combat violence. These, along with spreading the messages of free speech, open dialogue with those you disagree with, making sure that all people's voices are heard, this is how you defeat evil ideologies. You give them a platform where all you can do is hear how wrong they are, and they'll fade away. So when your friends on Facebook try to make an issue about guns, you have two options. You can tell them to read up on the Bill of Rights, on James Madison's notes, on personally having written in interpreting the Second Amendment, the meaning of the comma that separates the two clauses referring to the militia and the right to bear arms. The meaning shall not be infringed. You can tell them about the issue not being really with guns but really being seated with the people behind the gun, the truck, the bomb, the knife. Or you can choose not to debate them at all. If you think that they're a lost cause, personally, I would say not to. But I enjoy getting into it with people online sometimes. I also understand that no matter what I do or show them or convince them of evidence or otherwise, providing them with information or telling them to go and look at what's come out on 4chan, regardless of whether it's not on CNN,
Fake news.
they they will deflect and change their strategy. People that talk about guns, if they don't know anything about guns, that you point out their suggestions to ban an AR-15 won't actually change anything. That the AR-15 style gun has been made for 60 years, and that when they say automatic style weapon, they don't know what they're talking about. You can point those things out. They'll just deflect and say that they should ban all the other guns then too. And if they don't work themselves into the corner of ban all guns, then they talk about background checks. You can assure them that in the most recent cases of shootings, in the United States at least, guns have been purchased legally and that the background check systems worked, if simply never going to be enough to stop the murders. And in the case with the Sutherland Springs shooter, he did have the background check. And in this case, like we said before, the state bounced him, but at the federal level, because of a Navy mess up, an oversight. By the way, we're asking to trust the government with more and more of our information, yet they can't even keep track of and keep straight the stuff we have them do now. So that's what happened. The
Well,
government screwed up.
that's what most of these tragedies end up being. It's one of those drops of water that gets through the cracks of the government bureaucracy, and they get a gun,
Yep.
or JFK,
Mm,
9/11.
mm.
It's all the same type of stuff, and these people want to give the government more power over those types of things.
It's the question of when something goes wrong, do you want to strip liberties down from the individual to try to make the group feel safe? Because in reality, we know from history the group will not be safer. And when individuals give up their rights for the sake of freedom, I think this is the Ben Shakespeare. Nope, that's not right. Benjamin Franklin quote, although it could not be him either. It could be either or neither of them.
It's somebody.
It could be both. They both might have said it. Bill Shakespeare and Ben Franklin might have said, when an individual gives up their freedom for the safety, and I guess when you give up liberty for security, you end up having neither. And when individuals in the United States allow the Patriot Act to continue for mass surveillance of the population, it's a bad thing. We should not be doing that. When we have FEMA preparing to essentially take over people, I know we're going to have a segment on that coming up soon because we're going to blow the lid off of the FEMA camps that are around. There's one locally within 40 minutes from here. We may even go pop in.
Shelby.
We might even go see how things are going.
Right?
We also have Muskegon, I
Well,
believe, has
actually,
one.
actually, it's a funny story. My cable guy was helping me out at my place today,
That's good.
and he was from Shelby Township,
Yep.
Michigan,
Yep.
about 40 minutes north of Muskegon.
Okay.
The Shelby football stadium of the high school, okay, used to be a FEMA like concentration camp for Germans back in World War II.
Oh, no
It
kidding.
used to be out in the middle of nowhere. This is before Shelby,
So
this was, anyway, the barbed wire on the fence
is
pointed
turned inward. Yeah,
inward.
inward. Yeah, and also, I mean, there are a ton of different places in the United States that it looks like that. Denver International Airport is one that I'd love to see someday with all the
Spooky.
spooky ass paintings that they have of dead horsemen and everything else. But look, we're getting off topic. The overarching point is this. Okay, when a senator says, "This is what we're going to have to get used to until we ban guns," he's a jackass. When your friend demands that rights be stripped of law abiding citizens in the wake of a murderous attack, they're ignorant of the principles of liberty and freedom and they're standing on the graves of those victims to promote a political point. When we discuss banning the method of hate and not the source of it, we're failing. Right now, the source of hate and division in the country is not President Trump, as you might be told. It is instead those that oppose him. It is those that oppose the United States and the people. And it's time that we let them know the American people will not now, nor ever, allow a superseding amendment to the second. Case closed. Now, just a couple finishing points. Did anyone notice that the murder victim of the Sutherland Springs shooting totaled? I should say. Let me rephrase. Did anyone notice that the murder victims of the Sutherland Springs shooting totaled up to 26? That's 26 lives that were taken. However, and I'm not about to say that this is like a false flag or anything like that. We're gonna look into the total, blah blah blah. What I'm saying is the total is 26. That includes the unborn child of Crystal Holcomb and her husband. So I just want to make the point here, I guess, on the tail end of this, as I did on Twitter earlier this week. The media all over, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, all print media, we're all on the same page. They're all taking into account the unborn child's life when there's a killer shooting people. They won't do this, though, the next time that someone brings up abortion. When women themselves choose to kill an unborn baby, it's labeled women's rights. It's labeled a health choice, etc., etc., when it's murder.
My body, my choice.
Yeah, it's not a choice. You have four choices: abstinence, contraception, I guess, or,
Have the baby and have it,
yeah,
or have the baby and give it away.
and adoption, right? So
You're right. There are four options.
those are your four choices. One of them is not murder. And if I told you that you don't like your boss so much that you want to kill him, and I told you that unfortunately for you, you can't kill your boss because you don't like him, um, that's murder. You would not make the argument that I'm taking away your choice and your freedom of liberty. And that's what people that make an argument for abortion do. They want to belittle the life of the child. They want to say that the child is not truly alive and doesn't have rights. But in a case like this in Sutherland Springs, Texas, the shooting totaled to 26 because Crystal Holcomb and her husband were pregnant with an unborn baby. And that baby was named the 26th victim. Unnamed, unborn, but a 26th victim. CNN has it. MSNBC has it. Fox has it. All print media has it. They're all on the same page. So I don't understand why they can possibly stand by the argument that abortion should be legal, that abortion is not murder, when at the same time an unborn child who's killed in a shooting is considered killed and is considered a victim. Pat?
Yeah, it's the same thing of when you ask somebody who is pro-choice and you say, well, if it's if it's not going to live on its own and it's it's not sentious, or I believe is the term they usually use.
Sentient.
Yeah.
conscious.
You could
Yeah,
say, okay, well, what gives me the right to, pull the plug if you're in a coma? You're gonna make it if we just chill out and sit there for 9 months, you'll make it out of the coma.
right,
But I can just pull the plug right now. They say, well, no, no, I'm still alive. Well,
right. It even says right here. I'm taking this from CNN's own article. And it really, guys, I'm just making up to be like it's a big deal that they would report it that way. Of course, they're going to report it that way. The problem is, I don't think anyone really cares about the hypocrisy of them saying 26 victims, one was unborn. If there was a car accident with a mother who was pregnant, we would say there were two deaths. But in the case of that mother driving to an abortion clinic to have an abortion, it would not be. So I just don't understand why her choice to kill a baby is okay. But here it goes from CNN. The quote is halfway down the article into the lives of the victims. It says authorities have included Crystal Holcomb's unborn child in the death total of 26. So there it is. Um, any final thoughts on that issue before we move on to a couple other things and then hang it up?
nope.
Okay, cool. So, and I don't know if anybody knows this person on Twitter. Their name is Chris Bowman. It looks like he is some kind of Twitter thought police. Um, and it's actually interesting that Twitter has a police force now. But he tweeted saying earlier this afternoon, now that I started publicly exposing Russian propaganda bots and accounts on Twitter, the trolls have really come out of the woodworks. Well, that's just not true. I looked at what he was doing, and it's adding a ton of people that are pro Trump to a list called Russian bots. It does not prove that any of them are. And even if some are, I don't think that has any bearing on a witch hunt. But let's look. He says, would still really appreciate if someone at Twitter security, right? Twitter has a security force, would really appreciate it if someone at Twitter security wanted to give a shit about this. And then if you click the link, it shows just a list that he's created and with a bunch of people that he's put on it because their profile in some way has an American flag, fireworks, MAGA, hashtag Trump Train 20, and a bunch of others. Um, I just wanted everyone to see that hypocrisy and know neo McCarthyism is on Twitter. That's right, neo McCarthyism is on Twitter now. It has been for I think a while, and it's unbecoming, Chris. Okay, building lists of people you don't like to that you want to get rid of. That's an odd thing to do.
It's really
Yeah,
Nazi-ish.
get well soon, Chris.
Chris Schindler.
Ooh, ooh,
Ugh.
Chris Bowman,
Got him.
not a fun dude. Okay, other tweets that I want to talk about. Bernie Sanders tweeted, how many tragedies must we witness before Republicans in Congress agree to pass legislation to end this epidemic senseless slaughter? Okay, Bernie Sanders, this is probably a bad impression of him. But, anyways, how many tragedies must we witness before Republicans in Congress agree to pass legislation to end this epidemic of senseless slaughter? He's got some good alliteration, I'm not going to lie. But Ryan Fournier responded. He clapped back pretty good. This is yesterday. He says, so you want to defund Planned Parenthood? Boom! I agree. I think he's right. As we just talked about, Planned Parenthood is far more senseless slaughter, and it is an epidemic, and we should really draw attention to that, I think, going forward.
Planned Parenthood is a racially motivated ploy to destroy the African American community
Right.
here in the United States.
It's a way to
It
keep
is.
it's a way to keep the race of black people thin in the United States so that they can continue to be considered a marginalized group. If the rate at which people in the black community in America got pregnant was equal to the rate at which births occurred, you would see that the population would slowly start to increase and you would have a better proportion of black to white or to other races. And unfortunately, Patrick, you're right. You see Planned Parenthood being used more often by low income people and specifically by African Americans. No, I'm not saying that, by black people in the United States. And it's unfortunate because what they're not realizing is every time they vote for somebody who would support Planned Parenthood, what they're supporting is like the factory murder, I should say, systematic murder of black people that would otherwise be independent, thoughtful citizens.
It is the biggest lie and covert genocide that humanity's ever seen. I truly mean that.
Yeah, I think you're
So many
probably right.
children are dying. It's over 500,000 children are dying a year.
Right. Yeah, it's gross. And I know that people would say, well, what would you do if you're going to have that child? You're going to put them into a network of systems that are going to see, that they're mistreated and abused. And you know what? I agree. I think we need to do a lot more for orphanages. People talk about, oh, little old Annie at the orphanage. Have you ever seen an orphanage? Like, I don't know where there would be one. If I wanted to adopt a kid tomorrow, I don't know where I'd go.
No, I mean it's mostly a foster care system now.
But what we need to
But
do, I
yeah,
guess my point is to advertise adoption, to make adoption better, which is why I don't know that the tax reform bill that we're seeing right now that proposes cutting um, the adoption
the
tax.
loophole. It
Right.
was a loophole. They're now going to tax it.
Okay. So explain this. What does that mean for us?
Basically, when you have to, it would be like a tax write-off incentive saying, yes, I didn't buy a house this year, but I bought, a child this year,
I
essentially.
bought Mabutu from
Yeah,
Africa.
yeah.
Okay. And now what?
So they would get a tax write-off and a credit,
Okay.
essentially. So
And so now
now,
they don't.
yeah, they're just gonna tie it up, and they're gonna have to expense it as if it was anything else.
So
It's not a special
right, but
write-off.
so it's not a special write off, but they
Right.
have equal treatment as a normal child. I mean, you're still getting like
Right.
when you're married, obviously you pay higher taxes, but then when you have children, you get money back based on how many dependents you
Yeah,
have.
you can still claim it as a regular dependent.
But what I'm saying, okay, great. Well, then I guess I don't really have much of a problem with it, though. I did see that earlier on the news, and I think probably a lot of other people would have some more questions on that
It's
too.
it, it seems like a throwaway benchmark type of write-in.
Right.
It does not seem like it's really a major part of the bill.
No, and I think, I mean, if anything, if that's really going to be a big focus of the bill is to highlight some really bad things about it, then maybe you continue to say, okay, well, why don't we just make that a part of the bill that we don't include? Say, okay, well, let's leave that right on then. And then if the Democrats get really happy about that, we pass the bill because they get 0.4% of the bill that they like, then fine, let them think that they have another false victory like they do with Ed Gillespie in Virginia.
Congress is built to fail. It's built to not work very well, and they did this on purpose. The founders, they
Mm.
did this on purpose. They didn't want government to just be able to crank out bills all the time.
Right. They wanted with the checks and balances that they have to keep current legislation standing. They also created the Congress to work against itself so that whenever a bill was passed into law, it made it through the rounds and it made it through a gauntlet of academic and intellectual thought. I guess police really, they're people that we elect to think for us at the federal and state levels to ensure that the bills that they're passing into law actually make sense and they actually do good things. And I don't think in the last probably 65 years we've really had that happening.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, okay, the last thing, I know that was kind of a dull one, but the last thing, we'll leave it on this. Okay, everyone should be excited for tonight. This is the 8th, 11/8/2017, so it's Wednesday. Tonight on Tucker, a very special Tucker Carlson. Donna Brazil is going to be on Tucker Carlson tonight.
Big.
It's big. It's huge. It's going to be great. Okay.
It's gonna be amazing. Okay.
I've talked to a lot of people who watch Tucker Carlson. He's a great guy, by the way. Okay.
He's a snack.
Oh, he's delicious.
He is a
okay,
snack.
hey, listen up, everybody. Listen up, you freaking liberals. You better be watching Tucker Carlson. You better be watching Donna Brazil. Because listen, Donna Brazil is going to be on Tucker Carlson tonight. I hope that he asks her why she thought she was at risk of assassination and what does she think really happened to Seth Rich.
What happened?
We saw that the article was, I guess, credibly written that Donna Brazil had a phone call exchange with Hillary Clinton where Hillary slammed the phone on Donna when Donna begged Hillary to dig into Seth's death. And you know what? We're not even going to call it his death anymore on this show. This show will now forever refer to Patriot Seth Rich and his assassination because that's what has happened. We're not even going to get into today into the DNC corruption and collusion with the Hillary Clinton Foundation. We're not going to get into pay to play. We're not going to even talk about it. I know we already talked about it last week, Saturday, with Donna Brazil's revelations, but there's way more to this. It's just the tip of the iceberg. We're talking about it on Saturday. This is just the Wednesday show. Get prepared. Patrick.
Yeah, we've got about 3 years until another Trump election day. So we got a lot of time to talk about Hillary Clinton and the corrupt DNC.
Now, I will say this, as it is Wednesday, the 8th of November, 2017, it has been how many days since the election?
been 365 of the best days in the world.
365 beautiful days in the best timeline in the universe.
Hell yes.
Multi-dimensional operations we've got going on, and our president, thank God, he can play 4D chess with his opponents.
Oh, he's great.
When everyone thinks that he's hating Jeff Sessions, I think Jeff's secretly investigating on Hillary already.
Interdimensional chess.
I think they tell Donna, hey, go ahead and drop that book because we got hot indictments, 12 of them sealed, coming up next week.
I got a question. James Comey, you wrote a book? He just released it. He said it was his memoirs. How was he writing that many memoirs during all that investigating?
Well, you know what I think is also funny is that he's got a lot of memoirs, yet in his Senate hearing, he couldn't remember a lot.
What?
Oh, I'm not allowed to say. I can't really answer to that.
I don't recall.
Interesting. Well, hey, that's it for us on the Borum Forum. Patrick, any last words?
Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're going to be uploading a lot of great content there, and it's going to be a great place. You're going to be able to watch it. We got some great studio equipment coming, and it's going to be great. Thanks.
It's going to be awesome. Thanks, everybody, for listening and tuning in. And like Patrick said, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Twitter. We're going to have some fun in the next few months. So stick around. Stay tuned.